Bitcoin climbs back to 3-month highs as the industry's largest acquisition looks set to go ahead. We cover all this right now in the Collective Shift weekly recap, actionable insights, and a breakdown, all in under 30 minutes. Nick, I'm back this week and Bitcoin's a lot higher.
Yeah, really good. As you can see, Bitcoin's doing well with you having time off. Simon did well to fill in those very big boots. So excited just to get into a lot of the big topics. You know, as we talk about, Trump finally launched that token, which was pretty underwhelming to say the least. So we'll get into that and a lot more, but perhaps you could fill us in on the latest in the market.
Yeah, we'd be glad to there, Nick. And looking up on my screen now, we have Bitcoin up on the past 7 days, 10%, ETH up about 12%, and Solana up 14%. So we'll get into some of those reasons for the increase soon. But for Bitcoin, it's been bouncing around high 50,000s to high 60 or mid 60,000s, what feels like for 6 or 7 months now. So this 69,000 is the highest since the end of July. So nearly a 3-month high for Bitcoin. And yeah, personally, not getting too excited until you start to see multiple closes above the 70,000, which we'll get into soon. Whether that can happen before the election remains to be seen. But hey, never a dull day when there's some green in the markets. And relatedly, Bitcoin again is just stealing all the headlines, with Bitcoin dominance up to 58.5%. So that is the highest since March 2021. So anyone new to crypto, just what is the value of Bitcoin as a proportion of the overall crypto market? And yeah, you can see over a half of the whole market value is in Bitcoin. So again, you typically see this in the first half or the first 2/3 of any crypto bull market, which we're in at the moment. In terms of our first headline here, some big news coming in just in the past 24 hours or so. What's this one, Nick?
Yeah, I saw Stripe. They've, by all reports, acquired a crypto company, Bridge. So Bridge is a stablecoin platform, and they're kind of also a bit of a software company that helps businesses accept payments in stablecoins. So this is rumored to be for about $1.1 billion. So absolutely huge acquisition here. And it's actually, if it goes ahead, the largest acquisition in Stripe's history. So huge statement there saying that the biggest thing that they've acquired is a crypto company. So I really don't want to understate how much of a big deal this is really, that it's an expansion of Stripe's crypto adoption efforts. And it's kind of a signal that other fintechs are not really to be underestimated in their crypto positioning. And Stripe saying here there's a huge appetite. Stripe, I think recently in the last couple of weeks, turned on, payments for US businesses in crypto, and they started to roll out a few different supported integrations with a lot of crypto wallets. I think Phantom or MetaMask had a few. So this is just another huge acquisition that I'm really excited about. It's one of my favorite stories of the year, to be honest. For 1.1 billion, looks like Stripe really nailing that stablecoin category there.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, stablecoins have been a big talking point of 2024, even last year as well. And yeah, they look set to continue into next year. And as you said, MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, Stripe, all working with stablecoins, and a handful of other, large asset managers and potentially even banks moving into the future if regulations go a certain way in the US, which we will get to soon. But I suppose relatedly, an existing sort of member of the Federal Reserve there in the US, the central bank, he came out last week and spoke relatively favorably about decentralized finance, which, it was nothing set in stone, which is always worth noting with these sort of stories. But I think after sort of many years of neutral at best commentary about DeFi, but more commonly negative talk about the concept of DeFi. It was notable here that Christopher Waller said DeFi can complement centralized financial sectors, but of course they won't. And I don't think if anyone is ever really saying that they will replace the existing system, especially in the coming decades, maybe much later down the line. But yeah, that happened at a speech on October 18th, I believe, in Austria. So yeah, talking about stablecoins as well, as we had just spoken about, Nick. And they're talking here just the complementary nature. So Waller here saying that DeFi has the potential to improve centralized finance, increasing significant value that financial intermediaries and centralized financial markets deliver. So even speaking there that it could even be, the surge of DeFi and stablecoins could actually drive more value towards the banks and MasterCard and Visa and whatnot, which is certainly possible. But yeah, I wanted to include this. Again, nothing set in stone, but a shift in just the way that crypto is being discussed openly by really important figures, with Waller here sitting on the board of the Federal Reserve.
Great insight there, and hopefully we can start to hear more out of the Federal Reserve, because it's been a very contentious issue to say the least, and good news to see we have some people positive about it inside the Federal Reserve. But maybe pivoting to one of the, probably the hottest topic really, is the election update. We're now pretty much 15 days as of recording until the election, so it's absolutely flown by, to be honest. And Harris has actually started to make some more pro-crypto comments, which we're all waiting for. She said a few things here and there, but they've been pretty generic and haven't really committed to any tangible policy whatsoever. We've kind of got an update here saying that in her latest agenda plan, which was for an opportunity agenda for black men, she come out and actually mentioned crypto here, which I was really surprised to see. She come out and said that she'll support a crypto regulatory framework as part of this agenda. So, a lot of people are actually poking fun at this, because if you read the quote, it's actually not really clear what impact this would actually have for these people. Because the quote here is supporting a crypto regulatory framework for cryptocurrency and other digital assets, so black men who invest in and own these assets are protected. So still pretty generic if you put it down there. It's not the most eloquently, defined stance on crypto, we've seen, but it is something, and it is showing that, hey, she probably looks to be more supportive than the previous Biden administration, even though she was a vice president under that administration. So we're seeing a few differences there. I think the guys at Galaxy Digital come out with analysis of her statements compared to Biden and how they rank, and then including Trump's comments. Obviously, Trump being the most pro-crypto. You have Biden, who was very anti, and then you have Kamala, who is kind of probably sitting somewhere in the middle there. So encouraging updates. And as we look, I think, to different bettings sites, we're still seeing that it is very close, even though Polymarket is showing a very wide difference that is deviated compared to the rest of betting and polling markets. I'm not sure if you want to get to this, Matt, but I was just saying that there's a few whales out there that potentially are manipulating this, or voting in favor of Trump to try and get those odds higher, because we're not really seeing this at any other polling or betting sites out there.
Yeah, thanks for that update. And yeah, with Harris here, I think you shared, it was in your newsletter, I think, Nick, the Collective Shift newsletter. I think you might have linked to that Galaxy report and the graphic that they did of the different situations of which nominee becomes president. It was really great, I guess, quick illustration of how crypto may unfold after the November election. But yeah, up on my screen here, we've got the Polymarket odds and just odds from other betting agencies and whatnot. And yeah, it's potentially, I guess it's potentially true that, whales are impacting the odds on Polymarket. And potentially that would then lead on to the odds being affected in other betting agencies if they're looking for Polymarket for guidance. But up on my screen here, we've got about 5 or 6 other betting agencies, all with much the same odds as Harris, for Trump, sorry. And for Harris, Polymarket is by far the worst. So 38% chance there. And then for Polymarket, it's about 57 for Trump. So that doesn't add up to 100, because I think there's other candidates there. But you can see that it's interesting, because you see a lot of talk about Polymarket being biased towards Trump, but their odds of Trump are actually less, or not as favorable towards Trump than the average. So Polymarket here, 57% chance of Trump winning, but the average is 57.9, and there's 5 or 6 other betting agencies, all with better odds than what Polymarket has. So yeah, it's an interesting discussion there. I just put it down to the fact that I just don't really think anyone's really manipulating the odds just because of the arbitrage opportunity. But there is certain caps on certain bookies as well, in terms of just how much you can bet at once. So I guess that does make it a bit less of a free market in some aspects. But oh well, in a few weeks, Nick, this will all be over anyway.
I think Polymark is the most cited crypto application, which is a good thing. I even saw that it bet the New York Times in the news category. So, we've talked about killer apps for crypto, obviously Polymarket, whether people are trying to do funny business or not. At the end of the day, it is the most widely used and looked at crypto application we have, really.
Yeah, for sure. And just finishing off that one, I think it's been notable that crypto has been rising as Trump's odds have been improving. Again, as we've covered previously, it's not a perfect correlation, especially in those months where he was losing ground and crypto's price was sort of flat. However, it's interesting this time we're in, October 2024, and we've got asset prices at record highs across the board, really. Gold, Bitcoin almost, a lot of real estate around the world at all-time highs. The major stock indexes, particularly in the US, are at all-time highs. So yeah, it's an interesting time for sure. And if Trump goes ahead and wins, a lot of people are viewing that as favorable for asset prices, but we'll see how that plays out. In terms of just some other news here, I'll just quickly do this one, Nick. The Mt. Gox trustee, they've postponed their payments by another 12 months. So that is going to be now October in 2025. From my understanding, they're the ones that the repayments that happened in July and August did go through all clear, like the ones that were sent to Kraken and some other custodians and exchanges. So that was by far the bulk of the Mt. Gox sort of holdings that needed to be repaid to former users or creditors. So we'll have this slight overhang on the market of Mt. Gox having to get rid of the rest or repay the rest of their Bitcoin holdings. So that is at the moment worth nearly $3 billion worth of Bitcoin that will now need to go back in the market, but it now won't happen until at least 12 months time, where previously it was looking to all happen, hopefully it was by the end of this month. So yeah, I think it's been pushed back for all intents and purposes. I don't really think this will be much of a focus moving forward now that the bulk has gone.
I think the TLDR is, unfortunately, we're probably going to see more Mt. Gox unlock talk into next year, which we're hoping finally it might come to an end, but now we'll have no end to this Mt. Gox. And who knows, we'll probably get another pushback in 2025. History is anything to go by. Yeah. For me, the biggest story this week was really the A16Z State of Crypto report that they put out, filled with a lot of alpha, a lot of really good analysis at a high level of where we are in the industry today, and looking back, 3 years prior, and what are the common, I think, takeaways and real positive shifts the industry is really heading towards into next year. Did you have a chance to read this one, Matt? I know I had a few key takeaways that I had when I was looking through a lot of the data, which was very conclusive. I think it was a 50-plus page report by A16Z.
Yeah, we always look forward to this report, and I think the Electric Capital one, they're the two leading, I reckon, crypto industry reports, which help really. I think the benefit of these is they give you some more perspective. Particularly when we're in the weeds, we see a lot of just like meme coin activity has been all over the headlines the past few months, and even AI and all of that. But this does a really great job of capturing, I suppose, the state of the industry in its entirety. It's obviously biased towards trying to promote the best elements of crypto, but I suppose any industry report will always, skew towards seeing it through rose-colored glasses, I suppose. But the biggest takeaway for me was, I suppose, just how far crypto has come with some of the things we'll discuss in the upcoming minutes. I suppose the takeaway was just like, wow, there's so many use cases of blockchain that are no longer now just being talked about as potential. They are happening at the moment. Sure, still very early from where they want to be. But yeah, some really great signs, particularly in the realm of stable coins and deep in as well.
So keeping on stable coins, probably the biggest, I think, part of the report was focusing on, hey, this is really the first killer use case of crypto. Especially the one that I liked is how people are turning to these stablecoins in times of crisis of the local currency. So this was one of the biggest use cases. People have talked a lot about crypto that allows you access to US dollars for people who never really could access this before. So there's been a correlation in the report that shows adoption of stablecoins and currency inflation in places like Nigeria and Argentina. So really just shows that, hey, when these currencies lose value or they look volatile, people are turning to US dollars via crypto rails and stablecoins to hold these assets. So huge use case here, and one that I was really excited to see, shows such a strong correlation in the report. We saw another, I think, stat that showed just how much I think stablecoin industry as a whole is of a net buyer of US dollars, which really only builds the case of further positive, I think, legislation for stablecoins, because they're just more buyers of US debt and US treasuries that we don't really see too much to these days. So I think was it the top 15 that they entered into. So if they were a country, that would be one of the top holders of US treasuries. I'm not sure. Anything else caught your eye there, Matt?
I think some things I noted, just the Solana. Yeah, I think Solana's been the story of 2024 and even the end of 2023, but I didn't see too much of a focus on it or too many mentions of it. Like, sure, near the start, they highlighted that it was the most popular just in text, but if you see how the design of the graphic is, it sort of like takes away some of the shine from Solana. And I think that was on one of the opening slides when they do EVM versus non-EVM. But overall, yeah, a really great landscape, obviously very US centric given where A16Z is headquartered, and some really great data on every sort of sector. Was there any other takeaways you saw, Nick?
I saw one of the, I think, most common examples is comparing it to the internet. So they've kept this analogy going, showing that, hey, crypto is still in that lockstep with previous adoption cycles of big technologies such as the internet. The big caveat here is that they do talk a lot about addresses, and then we talk about users on the internet. And we've been pretty big on reminding people that, hey, addresses do not equate to users, because as we know, users can have hundreds, if not technically thousands of different addresses across a wide range of crypto products. So getting the actual number on how many people are engaging on chain is a lot, more difficult, and we should consider that a real upper, estimate of users. The other one that caught my eye was, hey, blockchains now process 50 times more transactions per second as they did only 4 years ago, which is crazy to think about. And if we extrapolate that number back to 2017, 2015, that would, I would love to see the stats on that. But it really shows that then in another 4 years how much this kind of trajectory is just going to keep going, and really excited to see massive progress. Other ones that stood out to me was probably the abundant block space that we have. To secure things or put things on chain is now never been cheaper than ever. And now we probably have the info we need, and it's all about those applications, which was a key theme, I think, from a range of crypto conferences in the last couple of months. There was even a lot of conference on AI, how blockchain use cases can solve a lot of the challenges that AI is coming up to, and that's probably another big use case that I think a lot of people will be looking to use that abundant block space for.
Yeah, thanks for those extra insights, and we'll link to this A16Z report in the show notes as well. Another notable for me that I did forget to mention was the amount of projects working to advance ZK technology. So over 250 projects, and they've linked to the source there, which is Electric Capital, which has their own dashboard on the ZK market for anyone interested. But to really keep it brief, I think ZK it's arguably the biggest dark horse in terms of like out of left field or seemingly out of left field technologies that could spur the next chapter of growth for blockchains. And to see 250 crypto projects working on advancing ZK, was really encouraging. Like if that was at zero or near just a couple dozen or something, that would be pretty disappointing because of how potentially extremely much more performant blockchains could be, and many other benefits if ZK is able to scale. So yeah, that's a really great one to, if you're wanting to do your own research and whatnot, you can dive into some of the projects named there by A16Z. And of course, keep in mind, many of the projects they've named, right, understandably so, are ones that are invested in by A16Z, but that's always just worth keeping in mind with these sorts of reports as well. But yeah, we will link to that, so feel free to check it out. And in terms of our next one here, what have we got, Nick?
We got the biggest token launch in the last couple of years, I would say, just because it's been linked to a current running, president, and that's Trump. So World Liberty Financial, we've talked a lot about this, and the WLFI token and its token launch. So this happens during the week, and it really hit a bit of a flop, a lot of people would say. They tried to raise, or said that they wanted to raise, a target of 300 million, and they've put the tokens at about a 1.5 billion valuation. So it was 0.015 cent per token. They raised, in effect, only about 4% of what they wanted, with about 900 million tokens sold, which equates to about 13, 14 million, give or take. So really disappointing adoption, which I think if we look back at what the token's actually used for and the way that it's structured, leaves a lot to be desired. And that's probably why a lot of people were worried to uptake it, especially when we're considering a 1.5 billion valuation for a cryptocurrency that's kind of non-transferable. It doesn't really equate any real value. There's been a lot of concerns that, hey, the Trump family and those associated with it actually will get a lot of the revenue generation. I was seeing some conflicting reports at how much the Trumps would get in terms of the fee structure in this protocol. And then we've obviously got just uncertainty about, I guess, altcoins in general, and obviously Trump's presidency. So not too surprised in a way to see it flop the way it did, given a lot of the concerns overhanging, the token, which we put out a newsletter on to kind of warn people about. But I'd be curious to see if how close they get to this goal, because I'm thinking 300 million may have to be a while until they raise that money.
Yeah, for sure. It was almost it was encouraging to see it not do so well, because I think it's a sign that the industry is growing up and the market is maturing when they can see through a lot of the smoke and mirrors and the lack of detail about this project. So it'll be interesting to see if Trump's odds keep improving, whether this will increase, because presumably he'll be incentivized to sort of have a project like this be able to operate in the US. Obviously, it won't be the be-all, end-all, but you'd think it'd be more likely that World Liberty Finance would be able to operate in the US. But that's just a very outside, still a small chance of why you should be excited or pay attention to this project. Is it my understanding that you have to be an accredited investor to be able to participate in this token sale?
Yeah, so it's only for accredited investors in the US, which was another core reason why it probably flopped, because you really had to meet those really onerous standards of what it claims to be, a sophisticated or accredited investor, which, tends to be whether you got a net worth in the millions or, you have reoccurring income of I think $200,000, $300,000 in consecutive years. So you got to be, on the higher end of the spectrum to afford to be able to buy the tokens. And then I'm also thinking, hey, 1.5 billion valuation for a product that wasn't even really explained properly or have released a platform for people to use or information about it is a stretch by crypto standards when we think about it.
Yeah, definitely. It just got up on my screen here that they've whitelisted. Yeah, it was about 100,000 accredited investors. So a lot of them registering but not coming through with the dollars. So over onto some other altcoin updates. We had Sui in similar, I guess, circumstances or controversy related to last time I was on the podcast with Celestia and Eigenlayer. It was sort of related, I suppose, the same theme of just very murky, a lack of transparency regarding what happens to tokens controlled by either the ecosystem fund or the foundation, the SUI Foundation in this case. I think SUI Foundation sort of rebutted a lot of the criticism. Like those allegations were that around 400 million worth of insider selling on the open market had happened with regards to the SUI token. And yeah, for what it's worth, the SUI sort of has put forward a case of why that's false. I think technically, like it is false, but I think the criticism still came down to sort of who is this infrastructure partner, who does own all of these tokens under a lockup schedule, and how come no one has insight into the details of this lockup schedule and whatnot. So yeah, overall it was relevant for SUI, but as we've been saying, it's good overall that knowledge of these sorts of things are continuing to improve between Eigenlayer, Celestia, and now SUI in the past sort of month. All very different stories, unique individually, but overall great to see the market sort of wising up to this sort of thing.
Thanks for that one, Matt. Maybe pivoting to an L2 roundup, I really noticed this week huge amount of Ethereum layer 2 action that happens. Probably notably, Base overtook Arbitrum to become the largest Ethereum L2 by total value locked. So huge deal here because Arbitrum, really well known as probably the DeFi hub on the L2 networks. Base, we've long talked about its distribution, and really looks like it just continued to power forward and really dethrone all the L2s that's come to market so far. And Base is really looking like the place to be for Ethereum L2 activity, and probably now DeFi. I'd be curious to see how this shakes up with the likes of Unichain that we talked about on the pod last week. That it actually looks to try and take that title of home of DeFi on Ethereum L2s. So huge amount of news here. We even saw OP, the Optimism token, they did their 5th airdrop. So if you're active on the Optimism L2 networks, you may be eligible for about 16 million worth of OP tokens. There was about, I think how much was there? About
nearly 55,000 addresses.
Yeah, so a huge amount of addresses that were eligible. So if you are, maybe worth checking out to see about that airdrop, and obviously be careful of any scams or anything getting you to claim it. Make sure it's only from the official website there. Also saw Starknet, they come out and I think tested Stark staking and a new EVM compatibility upgrade on their testnet. So Starknet, one of the best technical teams out there that really pioneered a lot of research into, when you talked about, Matt, the ZK space, but they've really struggled to attain users and capitalize on a lot of that knowledge. So hopefully we start to see a bit more out of Starknet, because it is tough to see a team with such strong technical backing just really struggle, I guess, on the consumer front.
Thanks, Nick. On overall, back to the layer 1, we had Ethereum. So Vitalik Buterin has been a lot more vocal and just getting, I think he's stopped being, from my understanding, more. He was very involved in Farcaster and Warpcast earlier in the year, but now he's and sort of leaving there from Twitter or X. From my understanding, he's sort of swung back and sort of trying to clarify Ethereum's stance at a time when it's really struggling for, I suppose, leadership or even just an agreement on what Ethereum's trying to do. So for what it's worth, he had 2 blog posts last week, both related to, in his opinion, where he sees Ethereum going, I suppose, as its architecture, and I suppose what its goals are and what it's wanting to achieve in the future. Overall, we can link to these 2 blog posts, but overall, I think still trying to make the actual Ethereum blockchain itself still become more performant. So performance enhancements coming in major upgrades in the future, which a lot of people has always been the case, but just hasn't been communicated well given the focus on layer 2s, and some other things there from Vitalik, that yes, he's acknowledged a lot of progress, but still a lot of work to do. So yeah, we can link to those for anyone wanting some reading. And there is the DevCon, so I would say still Ethereum's main annual conference. Of course, they have many other big ones like ETH Denver, but DevCon number 7 will be happening in Thailand in the middle of November. So yeah, Ethereum's really biggest and central sort of conference. Will be good to see some more updates coming from the core team and other sort of ecosystem projects as well.
We got over and appreciated here this week, Matt. I actually see we've both got maybe over appreciating things in the market this week finally. What caught your eye?
Yeah, it was just what I said earlier about the poly market odds. In my opinion, I just think it's really overdone. I think people talk about it way too much in terms of poly markets odds being manipulated, when, as I said, on realclearpolling.com, poly market, their odds for Trump winning are actually worse than the average. And of course, their odds for Harris winning are by far the worst. By far the lowest. But yeah, anything to do with them trying to prop up Trump by whales sort of trying to prop up Trump's odds, I think is really just overappreciated or overrated. What's your one this week, Nick?
I saw a lot of concern about Tesla moving some Bitcoin in the last week or so. So Tesla moved its entire, I think, 765 million worth of Bitcoin to some unknown wallets. That's really sparked a lot of confusion in the market, a lot of concerns that they're selling, that this could cause an impact or flow-on effect on the market, and the price of Bitcoin. I really feel it's kind of overrated in a way. You have to remember that it could be transferred for a multitude of different reasons, whether it's just key management, moving custody providers, or, even if it is moving Bitcoin, we've seen Bitcoin absorb a lot of sell pressure from the likes of, the German government and then Mt. Gox in a really big amount of distributed Bitcoin. So even if the worst happens and we see them selling, to me, it's not really the end of the world. It doesn't say a lot. After all, they did end up selling, I think, some of the bottom and got out of the Bitcoin in a very bad position. So maybe they're just showing that they're not the best Bitcoin holders or traders. And we should take that with a giant grain of salt, really, because that amount of Bitcoin can easily be absorbed in the market anyway, but most likely could just be them moving their custody solution around.
Yeah, great point there, Nick. And I think one other dark horse, of course, of reasons why Bitcoin could go up. I think people forget that Tesla did leave it open-ended when they said they were stopping supporting Bitcoin payments for their Tesla. I think they said at the time, hey, if Bitcoin becomes more greener in terms of the mining sources, I think they had a percentage figure of there being renewable sources of energy for mining Bitcoin, which we know has been happening. They said if that happens, I think it was 50% from memory, but could be wrong, that they would then add support for Bitcoin, which, it's all trending that way. So don't be surprised if Tesla actually comes back out in time and goes for being a lot more pro Bitcoin than they otherwise are. But we'll leave it there, and thank you all for listening or watching. As we said, the newsletter, that was the place where Nick shared that great Galaxy research graphic, and you can access more of that sort of content every Friday. So that is for free, and you can head to that at collectiveshift.io/newsletter and subscribe and follow the prompts there. So that is collectiveshift.io/newsletter.